Hello, and welcome to the Polk Pioneer Oral History Program, a collaboration between the Polk County Historical Association's Heritage Partners, the Polk County History Center, and Polk Government Television. I'm Murda Young, Historic Preservation Manager at the Polk County History Center and a member of the Polk County Historical Association. Thank you for joining us today as I have the pleasure of interviewing Mr. Robin Gibson, who has been nominated for Polk Pioneer recognition by the Polk County History Center. Robin, congratulations and thank you for joining me today. Let's begin your story with your birth and childhood memories. So if you will share with us about your early life, where you were born, some interesting stories about your parents, and I know there are interesting stories, and then your siblings.
All right. Thank you, and thank you for doing this. My parents were both born in Palatka, Florida, 4 doors from each other. And you'd think they would be a local or something like that, but they were pretty adventurous. And my dad was a pilot. He was an early pioneer pilot. He was one of the Navy's first carrier pilots. And when it was crazy to fly off those little small decks. And then after serving his time with the Navy in that capacity, he became a pilot for Pan American Airways. Pan American in the early 1930s was flying seaplanes. So he was flying these seaplanes. My folks got married. And he was stationed in Port of Spain, Trinidad, with my mother pregnant with me. And I was born in Port of Spain, Trinidad, November 8, 1936. And I stayed in Trinidad all of 5 weeks. And so they moved quite a bit. My brother was born in Oakland, California, when my dad was flying the China Clippers across the Pacific. And my sister was born in Rio de Janeiro when we were there. I was old enough to remember that. And then my sister was born in Miami when World War II was breaking out. We came back to the U.S., and then from there, my dad went into the Navy. So that was the early hop, skip, and a jump around the different places.
Tell us a bit about your mother.
My mother was the oldest of 4 daughters of a Palatka lawyer, J.V. Walton, who was quite a lawyer. There are stories about the Ku Klux Klan and everything else. He was opposed to that and brought the city through some things. There were some very interesting stories about that kind of thing. He practiced law for 50 years in Palatka, and then his second child, a daughter, Kate, became one of Florida's first women lawyers. Wow. And so he and she had the firm in Palatka, and I clerked there when I was in high school, ran errands and things like that, got used to a law office and liked it. And the schools were really primitive. She was tutored and went to Randolph-Macon for college. Then actually my dad had moved with his family to St. Augustine. My folks did not meet until they were of college age. And then it was set that they were for each other. They had a long and very fine marriage, and then so there were 4 of us.
That's a lovely story.
Mm-hmm.
Now, we mentioned a brother and 2 brothers and a sister.
One brother.
One brother.
Well, I was one of 2.
You were one. And so what was your brother's name?
Jack.
Jack. And your sister's name?
Susan.
Susan. Jack and Susan.
And then Joan after that.
And Joan.
Yeah.
So this is a great time to talk about, there are 3 children in this family now, about your childhood. What was the childhood like for you?
Well, when we came back to Miami, my dad was still flying seaplanes. I remember Dinner Key Auditorium and Coconut Grove and the seaplanes landing. It was a spectator sport. People were around the where the planes came in from, and Pan American was flying the globe, so there would be these foreigners that would come in for places. The seaplanes would land. They would send the boats out to get the people off the seaplane. In come the boats with these people from everywhere. And then the planes eventually would be brought, and they would come up a ramp in onto the tarmac and into the hangars. And little did we know, but later on when I was in junior high school, my dad, my brother, and I built a 31-foot Chris Craft cruiser. They had the basics for a kit. And it took 2 years. We built it in a vacant lot next to our house on the Biscayne Bay. And then we wound up taking that boat back to Dinner Key, and we scraped the bottom of it and took care of it in those same hangars.
Fascinating.
Mm.
So your childhood was fun.
It was.
Certainly the naval influence had some impressions on you all as you were young children.
We were a Navy family.
Navy family, sure.
And as I grew up, I enjoyed sports, especially team sports, and did a lot of that. That was, and then in college, intramurals. So that was what we did. It was school, and then the afternoons it was at the Miami Shores Community House, and playing whatever was in season, and really had a great childhood. We traveled everywhere on bikes.
Oh, wonderful. Where were you in school? Which schools did you attend?
Miami Shores Elementary School.
Okay.
And then Horaceman Junior High School, which was fairly new at the time, and then Miami Edison High School.
Any special memory from either of those locations other than riding your bike to school?
I just, there were no air conditioning, and there was some, and no heat, and there were some cold days. Eventually, as a kid in high school, I delivered Miami Heralds and earned enough money to buy my car when I was 16. And you could make some good money delivering papers. And sometimes when it was near freezing or freezing, and I was doing it on a scooter. My dad liked these 3-wheel scooters that were at the airport. By this time, he's flying land planes. And so we got a 3-wheel scooter, 2 wheels in the front, 1 wheel in the back, Cushman scooter, and a wood stake body. That's what they would carry things with from plane to plane, and we got one of those, and we carried our papers in them.
That's pretty fortunate.
Mm-hmm.
What a great thing.
Mm-hmm.
A 3-wheel scooter. I'm glad you described that because I needed a little description of what that looked like. So you've had a great childhood, had fun down in the Miami area, and then we're off to college. Where did that take you?
That took me to the University of Florida. My folks said, we will, wherever you want to go, and I just thought the University of Florida was a traditional kind of classic university in a small town then, and with ivy-colored walls, and it was just kind of a concept of a university, and it was close to home, and I liked it, and that put me on the road from Miami to Gainesville on Highway 27, which took me through Lake Wales, Florida. And little did I know that would be where we would wind up. But I well remember that ride when, and it was just a 2-lane road. That was US 27, was just a simple 2-lane road. And when you got between Okeechobee and Lake Placid, you hit the ridge. And so you would do a little upward climb, and then the citrus would begin. And we would drive through the hills and the lakes and citrus was really prominent at the time. It was healthy. There were the blue lakes and the green citrus and the hills, and it was really a beautiful drive. They didn't call it Scenic Highway then, but it was truly scenic, more than it is now today.
Now, did you continue your interest in athletics while you were at the University of Florida?
I played intramurals.
Intramurals, okay.
And actually, this is probably a little too much. I made a couple of all-campus teams, and we had a great intramural program, and thoroughly enjoyed it. A lot of oddball sports. I've played a bunch of them, and in the process met some guys on the other teams, and worked with people in my fraternity on our teams, and so it was a lot of fun, a real supplement to going to class.
Mm-hmm. Name your fraternity for us.
Sigma Nu was the fraternity.
Thank you.
Heavy representation from Polk County, by the way.
Interesting. Interesting. And you stayed there for law school?
I did.
Yes. Now, I understand, I know because we had a chance to talk about this earlier, you met a very special person while you were there. Tell us about Jean.
Jean came from St. Petersburg, and she was in another sorority. We fancied ourselves to be in the Sigma Nu. We won the intramural championship. We had a lot of other distinguished things, and we thought we were pretty good, and a lot of people thought so too. And then Jean was in the Tri-Delt sorority. She wound up being the president of that in her senior year, and I wound up holding the same office in the Sigma Nu. But I had met her long before that. And so here's this attractive girl with great sense of humor who had been valedictorian of her high school class. I had not been that. And I tell you, she checked all the boxes.
Okay. I see a future here.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Long future, 64 years.
Lovely. Lovely.
Mm-hmm.
So you asked her to marry you. How did that come about?
Well, I was going to law school. I graduated, and I was in law school, still kind of playing some intramurals and, doing some social things. And Jean was 2 years behind me in school, And she was going to be graduating in 1960. And that would have concluded my junior year in law school, 3 years for law school, so that would have concluded the second year. And I would have had one more year. So it fit pretty well that she would be graduating, and by this time we had been dating for a couple of years. We dated for 3 years altogether before marriage. And so in her senior year, she came to visit our home, and I had picked out a ring, and it was a family engagement ring, and so I was ready, and I think she knew something like this was coming. So one night I took her out to dinner. We went down close to downtown Miami and pulled up at a place. I'd scouted all this out, where there was a nice view of Biscayne Bay in the evening, and asked her to marry me.
Lovely.
And she said yes, and then we got married August 12th of 61.
Sweet.
And then she taught school. She was a math major, graduated with honors from the University of Florida in math.
That was unique at the time for a woman.
It was unique.
Right.
It was unique. And there were a number of married people in law school by that time. A lot of guys coming back from service, World War II, and I'll take just a minute. The thing was very different back then. The public university, there were no community colleges. And so the public university says, well, okay, if you can count to 10, we'll take you in, but there's no guarantee you're going to stay. Very different now, very competitive. You go in and there's no guarantee you're going to stay. And so really, one of the things they are alleged to have said, not when I was there during orientation, but look to your right, look to your left, they're not going to be here. And
ouch.
Yeah. And so it was a lot like that. And then, but there had been people that come in and had left or flunked out, go into the service, come back. Mm-hmm. And they did great. They
Interesting.
were high priorities then.
Yeah.
And so it was really up the competition, and there were veterans there. And so then a lot of them were married. So, and when it came for supplemental income for people in law school, a lot of the women graduates taught school. And everybody taught English and social studies and things like that. Jean taught math, which meant that she was very much desired in the school system, and she could teach 4 blocks away from our apartment right there in Gainesville, whereas a lot of the other wives who would taught things like English or home economics or social studies, the jobs they could find were in the surrounding towns, and they had a commute. Very fortunate. My math major made our lives a lot simpler.
Appreciate that so much. Well, so you're married, you're finishing law school. we'll talk about your law career in a bit, but let's go back to in your early career and having children. How you got to Lake Wells. Share that with us.
Well, I graduated from law school. In the process, you go through an interview process with different law firms and everything. I was very fortunate to be asked into a trial practice firm, and I knew that's what I wanted to try doing. And I was very fortunate to get a job with the Perry Nichols law firm in Miami. And so then we went from there to Miami, took the bar, and at this point, which will become relevant later, we studied together, Bob Graham and I, and we had been presidents of the student body of rival high schools. Miami High and Edison were the big rivals. Thanksgiving Day football game, our senior year, 40,000 people were in the Orange Bowl to see a high school football game.
Wow.
So it was a big deal. And then he and I pledged the same fraternity, and we got to be good friends. He went on to Harvard Law School, came back, and we studied for the bar together, took the bar. Both of us passed the bar. And I started practicing with the Nichols law firm and trying cases, and it was a very good postgraduate 4 years with an outstanding law firm, which I treasure. But in the meantime, I had been exposed to life in a small town. My grandparents were in Palatka. I had clerked in this small town law office and just figured that it was a good way to raise a family. When we were married and I graduated from law school, Jean was pregnant, and our first child arrived in March after June graduation, and we had 4 kids pretty much in rapid suggestion. It was group therapy, and so that's really started our family life down there. And then when the kids started coming along, the idea of raising kids in a small town was very attractive to me. I had a sort of a standard. I had been in Miami all this time, and I really had enough of salt water, cleaning the bottom of that boat, tell me all about that. Salt water, palm trees, and beaches were fine, but I wanted fresh water. I wanted some elevation. I wanted oak trees. And so that it was from Lake Placid to Leesburg. And that Hills and Lakes drive to and from University of Florida. And so it wound up to be Lake Wales, a great law firm in Lake Wales. I thought we were going to a small town. I'd sit in front of the drugstore and spit and chew with the boys and all this sort of stuff. Not true. First class law firm doing heavyweight legal stuff. We had One of our two senior partners was the first editor of the Florida Law Review, a younger guy who we wound up building a house 2 doors from each other. Roy Craig was from Harvard Law School. Clint Curtis was just a fine trial lawyer. And so it was a wonderful law firm, just a terrific experience. And by and large, I continued with the litigation, civil litigation. When I joined them, it was Woolfolk, Myers, Curtis, Craig, and Newman. When I left, by that time, it had become Woolfolk, Myers, Curtis, Craig, and Gibson. And Frank Newman went off to Vietnam, volunteered.
Wow.
Yeah, a wonderful guy. So that was almost 8 years there. The next step was to open my own firm.
Huh.
I had been the recruiter for the Woolfolk Myers firm and really come in contact with a lot of wonderful young law graduates, and we were successful in getting them to join our firm. It's still a great law firm today, and the whole philosophy and remnants of that law firm survive. And so one of those outstanding young guys was Ken Connor, who grew up in Mariana and had been to FSU Law School. He came and he had practiced with us probably a year and a half, something like that. Obviously, a very talented guy. We liked each other a lot. And I was going to go out on my own. I knew I was going to give it a try anyway. And he was willing to take a chance with me. And so we left and opened the firm Gibson and Connor in Lake Wales. Our office began in the Wales-built hotel, and cheapest space in town. And we built our own bookshelves, and our wives had worked in shifts as a receptionist, and then we had 2 wonderful ladies who came with us from the Woolfolk Myers firm, and we had a good start. We really did, and so taking the step out to do it myself and specialize in civil litigation was a good decision.
And I can say and interject, I know it was a very successful practice. I know that you have enjoyed a very successful career. And I'm also very interested that your first office was at the Wales-built Hotel. That beautiful structure.
Well, in the sequence of events, I'm winding up having a lot to do with the renovation of that hotel.
I know. We'll talk about that. We're going to talk about your preservation interest in a minute. While we're talking about the law firm and the practice and the wives helping out, you're also at this time, you've built a family. You have 4 children. Right. So name the children for us in order of birth.
Kathy, who was born in Miami. Bobby was born in Miami. We came to Lake Wales, and Jean was pregnant with Danny. And Danny was born in Lake Wales, and then Jane came along, and she was born in Lake Wales.
Lovely family. I know in having conversations with you, it was very important for you all to have a solid foundation for the children.
I wanted to give them the best opportunities. We raised them in a small town. People knew who they were. And there are subtle controls that way because they know we parents care, and it was impossible for them to misbehave in any serious manner because we'd hear about it. So, and it was important to me, the small town atmosphere, and to be raised in a two-parent home, which I was. And so Gene and I agreed on that. And so it's not so prevalent today. It's more difficult to do that. But it was important to me. And of course, Jean being the person that she was and is, she was home there with them, and they benefited from that a great deal.
Indeed.
Mm-hmm.
Now then, about your career, oh my goodness gracious, there's so many achievements. Are you comfortable sharing a couple of highlights for us during the time you're practicing law? Anything to do with advocacy for the profession or a particularly important case? Anything you want to share about your career?
Oh, golly. I was president of the Young Lawyers section. That was the professional part of it, a member of the Florida Board of Governors. And really, a lot of this from my grandfather and my aunt, who I told you about, the importance of being a good lawyer. I liked what one guy said. This was a guy from Orlando. Somebody asked him, I was there, what kind of lawyer are you? He says, I'm a damn good lawyer.
Great.
And I wouldn't go that far, but that's the pride.
Mm-hmm.
And I have learned so much as far as the law practice is concerned. My practice was primarily civil litigation, and we were successful. A lot of it was on a percentage fee, so I like that. Our clients, we were together. We went up and down together, and if it was good for both of us, and if it was bad, we shared in it. And if you haven't lost them, you haven't tried them. And so there were a few of those, but by and large, we were very successful with virtually all of our litigation.
During the time you practiced, I know you experienced some changes in the profession. I can't exactly remember the year, but like, for instance, Article 5. After Article 5, it changed the way things looked in the trial proceedings. And is there anything like that along your career that you could identify for us that really significantly changed the practice of law in Florida?
Yes, and it would be advertising.
Talk about that.
My grandfather and aunt, they wouldn't dream of advertising. And so, I stayed away from it and never have advertised. And it really has changed the profession. We did a lot of personal injury, wrongful death litigation, and one of the things I really did was a lot of different things. We probably will get into some of the public service stuff and at a state and local level that I've been involved with that were really, as far as rounding out a legal career, were very instrumental. I never was typecast as one particular kind of lawyer. I like the challenges, and it doesn't bother me to be up late at night doing the things that you need to do to be very well prepared. And I had a lot of personal satisfaction out of being well prepared and doing well. That was important. So, and that meant that I really gravitated more toward business litigation, and I was, and the broader aspect of civil litigation, which eventually did not include any personal injury or wrongful death, and so it was a good broad range of types of items and cases, and I enjoyed all that. I enjoyed the variety.
Thank you so much for sharing the thoughts and memories about a career well done. Great job, great career, many achievements. But also in addition to that, I know that you have contributed so much to the betterment of the community in Lake Wales, Polk County, and the state. So I'd love to hear some of your memories about serving on the Lake Wales City Commission and, other things that you've contributed to the community. And what was your inspiration, and what is the most exciting part about giving your time back to the community?
Well, looking back on it, I realize now that I'm a community person. Someone said one time, don't tell me what your priorities are. Tell me how you spend your time and your money, and I'll tell you what your priorities are. And looking back on it, the way I spent those things has to do with the community. And so starting really with the advantage of being a lawyer, I did the sign ordinance for the city, and all as a volunteer. I had no aspirations for public office. I wanted kids to be raised in a two-parent home. So, and historic preservation, English and history were kind of the main things in my college education, political science degree, and so history was a big part of it. And then it dawned on me that, it's nobody came over on the Mayflower to Lake Wales, but history occurs in segments, and Lake Wales is a town that is really a product of the Florida boom. After the railroads were financially encouraged to go in the interior, and Lake Wales was enhanced as kind of a railroad town because the Atlantic coast tracks came through there, and after that, seaboard. So it's basically a boom time. That's a chapter in history. And fortunately, Highway 27 was not four-laned and through its regular route through Lake Wales, which would have torn the place up. It went west in some lowlands and everything, and that wound up basically preserving downtown Lake Wales. And downtown Lake Wales, fortunately, has some excellent architecture. The Bach Tower set a high standard. Edward W. Bach was really behind the scenes doing some things to help out the city a great deal, more than just building the tower and the gardens. So in 1969, I became the chair of what was called, I drew up the kind of a thing, a Downtown Development Commission. And I still remember my fellow commissioners, wonderful guys, merchants in town. There were four of them, and Edwin Friedlander and Chuck Harriman with the appliance store, John Ledden with a men's clothing store, and just wonderful people. And we worked together. And it eventually became that we did downtown improvements and landscaping and streetscaping that was recognized nationally. And the mayor and I went to Washington, D.C. to receive an award from the Landscaping Association, National Association. And the award was presented in the White House by Pat Nixon, of all people.
My.
Yeah. So there's Warren Waller and I up there doing that kind of thing. And it was really energizing for downtown Lake Wales. We had, and it led to, we were among the first, and I really appreciated the statutory powers that you have with community redevelopment agencies. So we were among the first to form a CRA and had to talk the city commissioners into it because they thought it was kind of sleight of hand. But they went along with us, and it's just a wonderful mechanism, tool for redevelopment. And one thing that drove me nuts as the years went on was people didn't appreciate what it could do. They abused it. They used it for city improvements rather than historic redevelopment. And eventually it got to me so bad that I did what I never thought I would do, and is one of the nuttiest things I've ever done, and that is run for and be elected to the city commission. And then the city commissioners immediately made me the chair of the Community Redevelopment Agency, which is composed of city commission. But that's way ahead. We've skipped over a lot of things talking about that, but it does explain the commitment that I have to historic preservation. I've renovated 5 buildings in downtown Lake Wales. That's quite an undertaking. A lot of personal satisfaction. But anyway, we ought to go back to 1985 when it was formed, and there were a lot of other things that occurred by then that I was involved with.
Well, what would be some highlights from 1985 that you're thinking about?
Well, prior to that, my buddy Graham, we kept in touch with each other. And when he was at the University of Florida, he met a girl that also in the same sorority as Gene was in, but he met a girl that I had gone to school with at Miami Shores Elementary, Adele Curry, and their kids came along about the same time our kids came along, and we did a lot of things together. And I know Adele was so stressed when we moved to a small town. She thought it was just primitive. And but as Bob was elected to the House and then to the Senate, they would plan their trips to and from Miami and Tallahassee to stop and see us. And then one day, Graham says he is going to run for governor. So okay, well, I'll back you. And I was thinking to myself, we can just go down in flames together. And so that was about a 2-year process. We met, the first meeting was in Tampa with about 8 or 10 people that we all knew. And there was a pro that Bob knew about. It was hired, just a classic old political pro. And the thing was, well, what are we going to do that would be significant? Well, Lawton Childs had already walked the state, so that wasn't going to be it. And then the idea of the work days came up, and Bob was all for it. Bob is naturally, or was, unfortunately, very inquisitive. It just fascinated him what people did with their lives, how they earned their living. And he had these little books that he would write all the things in. And so we liked the idea. And there was only one negative vote, and that was his brother Bill. And I'm sure that had to do, Bob was could be clumsy. And we're talking about climbing telephone poles and doing all these heroic things. I think Bill thought he was going to kill himself because he was willing. And, he worked the full 8 hours, and he was just fascinated with the people he met, the things they did for a living. And then we built that into a whole story. And it was basically the making of Bob Graham, because he had been basically an only child. His Senator Graham, his dad, had 3 children with his first wife, who he lost, and then there was eventually followed with a second marriage, and Bob was the only child of that second marriage. So he was really had not had a whole, and they lived in outside of town, and he had kind of a sheltered life to begin with. He was popular, likable guy, studious, smart as the dickens, Phi Beta Kappa at the University of Florida and off to Harvard Law School. But then this whole exposure to people, and of course those people are the people that vote in elections, and he was so inquisitive and became knowledgeable about everything that was going on in Florida, and it was the making of Bob Graham. Mm-hmm. When the night he was elected, and I was so happy to take that stuff out of the law practice and go back to, I had been straddling both lives and go back to full-time law practice. And then he says, and he didn't say a word to me until after it was certain that he was going to be elected. He says, I want you to be my general counsel. I didn't even know what a general counsel was.
Yet.
But that's basically the governor's lawyer. I said, whoa, I got to talk to the family, because I wasn't going to go up to Tallahassee by myself. Talked to Jean. She was up for it. And the kids, and I told Bob, I said, I'm not going to change careers, and I'm not going to leave Lake Wales, but I'll give you 6 months. And he didn't blink. He says, okay, you got to get your replacement. I said, all right, do it. I will. And that was after getting the permission from family. And the thing about it was the kids were up for it, because they knew we'd be coming back to Lake Wales.
Right.
It was only going to be 6 months. I never changed the buttons on my radio. They were all Polk County stations as I was driving around in Tallahassee. And so that was a quite an experience, and we went through a heck of a lot. And we had the first execution in the country for years. It had been tied up in the U.S. Supreme Court as to whether the death penalty was cruel and unusual punishment. For some reason, Florida was going to be the first, and everybody knew it in the campaign. Bob said it wasn't his favorite thing to do, I know that, but he said that he would carry out the death penalty. And they said, well, the death penalty they figured was a legal matter. Okay, so there was only one lawyer in the room, and I said, okay, we'll do it. And so that was a big responsibility, and first time in a long time. There was a lot of national attention to it, and we did pull that off. I came to know the warden at Rayford pretty well because we set up the procedures, and he was a big, strong guy. He had a desk with a glass top, and underneath the glass top, what was supporting that desk was a red plow, painted red.
Interesting.
He grew up on a farm, and he says, I don't want to forget where I came from.
Interesting.
I said, you're all right, my man. And so we organized the whole thing, and it went very well for what we needed to do, and that was just to demonstrate our competency. And even if it was controversial and distasteful, we could do it, and we did. And that kind of, from then on, set kind of a standard. We also called out the National Guard when the truckers went on strike and paralyzed the economy in the state. That was unique. And we had to figure all that out.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then when the 6 months was up, we had been through so much, Bob said, and I had got the replacement, a guy in Miami who was a good friend of my law partner, Ken Connor, and wonderful guy, Steve Zach, who later became president of the American Bar Association, but was just a young lawyer at the time, and he was willing to give it 2 years. But Bob didn't know him. And we had been through so much that at the last minute, he opted for one of our contemporaries, a good friend, that both of us, who lived in Tallahassee, John Orell. He married Leroy Collins's daughter, and John did a great job. That started a process to where we would get lawyers in from around the state to do the job. It was a great experience for them, as it was for me, but we got strategic about it. And so if we had a banking issue, for instance, we would pick a lawyer who specialized in banking, came in, and he would nail it. And then we did that all the way around. And then we had a cadre of really sharp lawyers who were in the peak of their careers. And then that converted into something that was very strong politically also. There wasn't and that was one of the advantages I had going to the University of Florida. There was hardly any town where I didn't know somebody.
Right.
And Bob had been off in Massachusetts, and so I could get these lawyers to come on board, and that really gave Bob exposure to a lot of really fine lawyers. and we had a good camaraderie also. It was very nice. One thing that's amazing is that when Bob Graham left being governor, and there was 2 terms, 8 years of making decisions, yes, no, having fun. He enjoyed it. But when you make those decisions, you make some people mad. When he left, his approval rating was 83%.
Oh, my goodness.
83%. These days, people in those positions can't get out of the 40s, and he had just done a remarkable job, and he put the people first. Mm-hmm. And I think the jobs had a lot to do with that, but it was absolutely putting people first. What's in the best interest of the state and the people who live in the state? Pure and simple. We go through selecting judges. Not one time did he ask which political party did any of these people come from. Not once.
Yeah.
It just wasn't a factor.
I know. Yeah. It
was just who, and he had a unique standard. Because I drew the selection process and modeled it after the Florida process. This was when I was chairman of the Federal Judicial Nominating Commission. And his standard, which I put in there, was capacity for growth. I had never seen that. Did the research and everything else. Capacity for growth.
Of the individual judge.
Of the individual
Their
judge.
Capacity.
He didn't want anybody coming in there on an honorary fashion and saying, he wanted to work and get better and better.
Wow.
And it's not in any other standards. Mm-hmm. I thought that was remarkable.
Thank you, Robin, for sharing all that with us. It is interesting to give thought to, the governor has some very talented people behind him helping him make some decisions. That is really fascinating.
One of the things that was an honor as far as I was concerned, I was asked, along with our good friend, there were 3 of us that graduated together at the University of Florida, to give the eulogy at his ceremony.
Oh, my.
And that was very significant to me.
I'm sure. Thank you. It's nice to hear.
I'll tell you one little story, which is insight into what it was like when we went to the University of Florida. Bear in mind that Florida was a really outpost, kind of a primitive sort of state. Swamps, mosquitoes, heat, and not a high population or anything like that. And then we roll into the Depression, where things went down, and then we roll into World War II, where there was the expansion of everything was non-existent. It was all the war effort. And then we came along not too far after that, and things had not changed very much from coming through the 20s and 30s. We only had 3 universities. They had the University of Florida, we had the Florida State College for Women, and we had Florida A&M. And there's a whole story about how it was male-female, but too much time for that. So when we came, it was in the process of changing. The other universities had not come online. The community colleges had not come online. It was these three places, and the University of Florida, with its history, was where people came from all over the state. And it was politically and educationally the university at the time. FSU was coming along, and only co-ed in 1947, and we were there in the 1950s. So it was the taste of old Florida at its end, before a lot of changes had taken place.
Interesting, yeah.
So Bob and I were presidents of the fraternity. He one semester and I the other, and the fraternity was going to have a state meeting one summer, and the fraternity sent the two of us to that. And then came our alumni advisor, and we went to this convention, and just three guys. He was, the advisor was probably only about 3 or 4 years, or 5 years at the most, older than we were. And I remember one night we spent in one of the hotel rooms, a couple of boring straight arrow guys. We weren't out raising Cain and in search of women or anything like that. I can't even remember what we talked about, but it was just three people who enjoyed being together. There was years later, there was a reunion of those three. It was in the O'Connell Center. Bob Graham was governor of Florida, and he was the honored guest for the event. I was the chairman of the Board of Regents that had the governance responsibility for the universities. And our alumni advisor back then was Marshall Kreiser, who was being sworn in as president of the University of Florida.
Oh, wow.
And those three people
What a reunion.
back together in this setting.
That's a great reunion.
And it sort of shows and because still that was a concentration of authority and power in one place.
Mm-hmm.
And it changed considerably now. It's very decentralized. But I've looked back on that and just kind of shake my head about how fortunate we were to be there at that time.
Well, you shake your head, and I just marvel at that story that you've just woven together for us. And that is an amazing reunion. And, I want to, speaking of weaving, want to weave in your work as a preservationist, because, I'm the historic preservation manager for Polk County. So the preservation story is very important. So I know you said you've restored 5 buildings in Lake Wales. Mm-hmm. I know most recently you've been involved in the restoration of the downtown, the streetscaping of the Olmsted plan. Mm-hmm. And then I know that you most recently restored the building on Park Avenue.
Right.
So, goodness gracious, a stucco-covered building that had something exciting underneath it. Tell us about the inspiration and how that came together.
Well, over the years, I had just the historic preservation was important, and the assets that Lake Wales has for its heritage, its architecture, and so forth. Very, very fortunate. And then, like I said, I was motivated to do the nutty thing of running for office, and then they put me in the chair of the CRA, and so we went from there. It was no feat of dramatic or inspirational leadership. All I did, just as a lawyer, I just explained to him how it's supposed to work and how it can be so beneficial, and why the city itself should keep their hands out of the cookie jar. That Community Redevelopment Trust Fund is for community redevelopment. RE is in front of development. And they bought it. We were very successful with the city manager who happened to be there. He had worked his way up from the bottom in city government and was a very bright, well-motivated guy, really a sleeper. And he became a magnificent city manager. We are on the same page. He bought into the whole concept of the community redevelopment, and the city commission was very supportive. We had a change of personnel, of elected folks. They were all supportive, and the community pulled together, and we have really accomplished a lot, but we are just beginning. We're barely across the threshold into what we're going to do. And the renovation of the Wales Mill Hotel is just going to be magnificent. We're working on that now. Of course, the money is critical. The historic tax credits are critical. We don't have time to explain all of that, but we are working our way through it and really maximizing the advantage we have with the Community Redevelopment Agency, the statutes, the laws that are on the books that can be taken advantage of, and also the federal tax credits.
Mm-hmm.
And we're putting all that together. We have found the national firm, best of in the country really, for renovating historic hotels. They are magnificent, a couple who are delightful, people who are well motivated, from St. Louis. It's Restoration St. Louis is the name of the company, but they've broadened. They're doing a big hotel in Lake Worth right now. That's their first foray into Florida, and we're next. And the Marriott system comes along with them. They are on the advisory board for Marriott. We will be on the list of international hotels that people go from place to place to support these historic hotels. It'll be absolutely magnificent.
Oh, I agree. It will have a significant regional impact. And it's so beautiful. And its story is so wonderful. I'm so excited about it. And I just personally thank you on behalf of every preservationist in the state of Florida. Thank you for your vision there and perseverance, because it's been a journey.
Can you imagine realizing that in the 1920s, the citizens came together and funded this hotel?
I know.
It wasn't any shuckster developer or anything like that. It was the citizens of Lake Wales. They raised the money and built the hotel. And then it's called Wales Built, B-I-L-T. We're going back to that name.
Wonderful. And in addition to that, you have, as I mentioned, the Park Avenue project. We're very fortunate. We do have a video of that particular preservation project, which we're going to include here.
As people walk by this building, I hope they take away two things. One of them very personal to me. One is the historic significance of what we have done and the pains we went to make sure that it was exactly accurate. And they appreciate that. And the second thing, which is personal, there's a nameplate at the top of center of the building, J.T. Rhodes. People say, "You're doing this, you put your name up there." No, it was up there, J.T. Rhodes, and J.T. Rhodes will go back. But if people look at the steel stairway that comes up from Park Avenue, there's a gate there. And that gate, we worked on its design and everything else. My wife and I have been married 63 years, and it's the Robin and Jean Gibson Gate. That's significant to me. I've been asked sometimes as to whether there were any setbacks in the project. The answer is there was a huge setback. John Olson, who was the general contractor and who we had a good personal relationship, died in his sleep in the middle of this project. His company tried to finish it without him, but he was way too important to his company. And so the company really collapsed, and we were left in the lurch. Now, my family came in, and to rescue their old dad, my son, engineering graduate of Georgia Tech, is a general contractor in Atlanta. So he came back and forth. My other son, who's a property appraiser, he drafted him to be the on-site supervisor, and that's what he was doing. And then the architect remained the same, a guy who grew up with our kids on the same block in Lake Wales. And then the interiors were being done by my neighbor across the street. My daughter, who does art gets art for people, did it for this building, and the aesthetic sense of everything was with the two of them. And then, so we had to put together a whole new team, but this was a different team. This was family and neighbors. And everybody kind of rallied to the defense of their old man and brought this thing to conclusion. That's very significant to me, to overcome that setback and without ever sacrificing quality, and to pull off this result.
And it is beautiful. I visited it. I paused for a moment, and I recall just what you shared with me about the years of marriage to Jean and where you all have matured to at this point in time. So I really do appreciate you sharing that portion of the story with us. Robin, I know that you were instrumental in the evolution or the beginning of the charter school system. Your name appears, it's stamped on that whole perspective or that whole project. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
I did not have, other than with the education of our 4 kids, had not spent a whole lot of time in the education effort in Lake Wales. But when it started going downhill and people started leaving town, leadership families leaving town to go what were perceived to be better schools outside, I couldn't stand that. That just didn't make sense for the quality of the community that we have. And so the lawyer gets out the books and starts, and I learned about the charter school system and the advantages that it has, sort of like CRA. if you take full advantage of it, it can do a lot. Most all of them are one school operations, but there is a way you can put together several schools in the direction of one board of directors. And so I drew up that system for that. We're the only one like us in the state of Florida. And then just wonderful support from the community. Of the 7 schools in Lake Wales, 5, the parents and the teachers voted to go into this charter system, which is a whole nother story. And and we brought that up from where it had declined. And I know we brought it up because people vote with their feet. And what happened was that people started coming back from Lake Wales, and then others from other towns wanted to get into our system because of the quality of the education that was there. I spent 21 years. I started off as the chair of the organization, but you have limited 2 terms. And so then I drew the bylaws. That's what, so then I became the general counsel. I was the lawyer for the system for all that time. And then when it came time for me to move on, there was a proposal to name the administration building, which is in downtown, after me, which I really appreciate. I'm honored by that. So it's the Robin Gibson Administration Building for the charter schools. And at the dedication, I reminded people that I had come to Lake Wales and started out in that building as a young lawyer in the back small office. And now the dadgum building was being named after me. It had come a long way. And I really appreciated the fact that the people doing that, they wanted our kids to be there. And I think in the video it talks about how our family had bailed me out when the contractor died of the building. And we have been through a lot together. What we call our license tag says Gibson 6. It's the 6 of us.
Oh, I love that.
And that has become my new email address. So they had timed the ceremony that I knew a little about, but then they changed it so that all 4 kids could be there. And they all came, 2 families from Atlanta, and that meant a whole lot to me. So I'm very grateful for that.
And we're grateful for all of the contributions you've made. And thank you so much for the story. We appreciate you.
Thank you for the opportunity to tell it.
Thanks again for joining in this session of the Polk Pioneer Oral History Program. I hope you'll check out more of our Polk Pioneer videos as we document these life stories in order to preserve and promote the wonderful history of Polk County and Polk County's families.